Hey there, welcome to Phlearn. My name is Aaron Nace. You can find me on Phlearn.com where we make learning fun. In today's video, we are taking this amazing composite image that we just completed for a recent pro tutorial. We're gonna break it apart into a bunch of different pieces, basically layer by layer by layer. And then we're gonna import it into Adobe After Effects, where we're gonna show you how to make an animation. Now, this is an incredibly useful technique. In this image, we have a lot of different layers, so the animation can be pretty complex, but you can do this with any type of composite image you're doing. As long as you have layers in Photoshop, you can create this type of animation. You're gonna see it's incredibly fun to do and not very complicated. If you wanna see how we actually made this image from start all the way to finish and follow along with all the sample images and included resources, you can do that on Phlearn.com as a part of our Phlearn Pro subscription. You can find more information in the link right down below, or just simply click on your screen. It's gonna be so much fun. Let's go ahead, jump into Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop. Now I've taken my document, I went ahead and resized it just a little bit smaller. You don't need a huge document with this. We'll go to image and then down here to image size. And you're gonna see my document is about 2700 by 2700 pixels. You wanna give yourself a little bit of space, but keep in mind your output. In this case, it's probably gonna be for social media, things like that, maybe 1080 square, but we're gonna start with about 2700 by 2700 pixels. All right, let's go ahead and hit okay. Now, going through this document, you can see I have everything in different layers all the way to my background. And then even in my background, we have a lot of different layers. We can see I turn things off and on, and we can see basically how it gets back to our original image. And we're just kind of like building up this effect, foreground and then midground and then foreground. So all of these different layers and effects, we basically want to break them down into their own separate elements. That way we can export them out individually and then bring them into Adobe After Effects. And it's really not that difficult to do. Let's show you how to do it. So we're gonna start with our very background. So let's go ahead and turn everything off. Now we're gonna open up our background group. Here in our background group, you can actually see it's made up of a lot of different elements, but this is just the very, very background of our image. So as long as this is visible, we are good to go. Now, basically what we're gonna be doing is saving all of these out as PNGs. Now, there is a feature in Photoshop where you can right click on a layer and then you can go down to quick export as PNG, but we actually don't want to use that feature. The reason is on the background, it's completely filled with pixels. That's okay. But for instance, this stingray that I have here, okay, let's go ahead and bring on these so it makes sense a little bit. This stingray that I have right over here, let's just turn that right back on. If I were to do a quick export on the stingray, it would export just the bounding box, just the area right around the stingray, but I actually don't want to do that. For instance, if I wanted to export the stingray, I want to export the stingray with this entire boundary of my document completely intact. That way, when I bring it into After Effects, it's going to be in the correct location. So every single layer that I export is going to have this entire boundary, like basically be the full size of my entire image, even if the thing that I'm only exporting is just a small part of that. So let's keep that in mind. Okay, so the first step here, let's go ahead and turn on our background. We're gonna go to File, we're gonna go down to Export, and then we're gonna go down to where it says Export As. Now, Export As, you're gonna see I have a lot of different options here. Our format on the top right, what we're gonna choose, we're gonna click there, and I'm gonna just choose down to where it says PNG, right here, PNG. That's really important because that allows us to include transparency, which you can see is right below it. So transparency is going to be very important. Now, with this layer in particular, doesn't need a lot of transparency. That's not important. But for the other layers, it's going to need transparency. Transparency. Okay, cool. So we have our background. That looks really good. So now it's time to click on this export button right down there. So we're going to hit export. So we're going to export this in our sample images folder. Now you guys can actually download all of these assets on Phlearn.com totally free. All you have to do is just click on the link right down below. Okay, so we're just going to call this Underwater Parallax, and this is just going to be 01. This is our first layer. So let's go ahead and hit save. There we go. And that's literally all you have to do. It's just going to take a second. Okay, next we have this section, this layer that's background light. Now, in this, we can see this is basically just made up a bunch of different gradients. So what we're going to do is I need to export that, but I don't need the background now, okay? This is going to be its own layer. So just make that the only thing that's visible. The eyeball is there. And we'll go to File, down here to Export, and over here to Export As. There we go. And here we can see, boop, boop, boop. Yep, this looks pretty good. PNG is exactly what we want with transparency, very important. So you can see we have transparent pixels. And we're going to go to Export again. And now in the export, we're just going to call this Underwater Parallax 02. So I'm basically just naming my layers, my different documents, basically how they're going to appear in After Effects. So let's go ahead and hit save there. All right, there we go. Next, we have our cave back. Now, if I start to make these visible, you can start to see like, okay, here's how they're actually like appearing in my image. But in this case, I don't want anything else visible. Like literally, I just want this layer that says cave back to be visible. I know it like looks pretty bad, but that doesn't actually matter because it's going to get covered up by the cave front, and then there's going to be the background light in the background. So keep all that stuff in mind. So cave back is the only thing that's going to be visible. We're going to go to File, down here to Export, and over here to Export As. There we go. Beautiful, looking good. Now in this case, if you wanted to do this as 3 different layers, like if you wanted to do this part as one layer, that part is another layer, and that part is another layer, you could do that. And that would give you the ability to animate all 3 of those layers. In this case, we're going to keep it nice and simple and just keep this entire cave back as its own layer, as just one. But anything that you have in your image, you can export individually, and that will allow you to have even more depth in your image. All right, so let's go ahead and hit export, and we're just going to call this 03. And we're going to hit save on this. We'll just do a couple more. Cave front, as you can see. Boop, let's make that visible. All right, you know the deal. File, down here to Export, and then Export As. There we go. This is going to be a PNG. Hit Export. There we go. And we'll just call this 04. Perfect. So you get the idea at this point, right? Basically just turn off your layers, make each one individually, and go all the way up through this stack. Keep in mind, if you have some layers or some groups that are set to different blend modes, like let's say you have a screen blend mode. For instance, I actually do. Let's go ahead and turn all this stuff on. There we go. My image is looking really cool. I have this group called Lighting and Effects. Now, all 3 of these layers, let's just merge them all together real quick and then change my blend mode back to screen. All 3 of these layers, as you can see, it actually adds kind of like this interesting little, like making it look like you're looking through water. It adds this effect to my image. Now in Photoshop, I have this set to a screen blend mode. So what we would do when we export that, for instance, is we just put it back to a normal blend mode, okay? And then we export it out as a normal blend mode. And then in After Effects, we import that totally regular, and then we just change the blend mode back to screen in After Effects. So if you have blend modes on your layers here in Photoshop, export them out as normal layers, and then just put them to the exact same blend mode in After Effects, and it's going to look exactly the same. With all that said and done, let's go ahead and just super speed up this process. You're going to see it's just going to go really fast. I'm going to export out all of these layers, and we'll be good to go. So I've went ahead and exported everything. Let's take a look in Finder. So here we are in Finder. We have our sample images. Now, again, you guys can download all these and follow along from start to finish if you want to. So here we have all of our images. Now, you can see as I went through the process, I did start to name a few of these like Stingray and Coral and Color and Hair Bubbles and our subject and things like that. And anytime that I like wanted it to be in a specific blend mode, like if it had a blend mode in Photoshop, I was like, okay, let's go ahead and make sure we have this blend mode here in Photoshop. There. Okay, so here we have our Underwater Parallax 01. Let's just go ahead and bring that up to the top. And as I scroll down, here you can just basically see these are all of our layers. Now for this, I had a color layer here. So let's just go ahead and basically, I'm gonna just make this, we'll just call this soft light. I had a layer that was coloring everything underneath it. So what I'm going to do is basically just make this a soft light layer in After Effects, and it's going to apply this color. So like literally it's just this color. All right, let's go through them here. We can see we have our fish on the right-hand side. We have our other fish on the left-hand side. We have this part is basically the outline of our subject's hair and these bubbles. Now, both of these are going to be in a screen blend mode. They're going to lighten everything up. All right, so let's just go ahead. I'm going to just click on here, and at the very end of this, we'll just call this screen, S-C-R-E-E-N. This way I know when I'm in After Effects, okay, cool. I'm going to remember that this should be a screen blend mode. Okay, next we have our subject. Next we have the fish, the other fish, and then the other fish. And then this is our other blend mode. This is the texture we're going to apply over everything. And then as you can see, it's in a screen blend mode. So this is all we need, basically exporting out each of these layer by layer. So now the process is going to be open up After Effects and then bring these in layer by layer. All right, let's go ahead and jump in After Effects and show you how it's done. So here we are in After Effects. Now we've got a new blank project. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to where it says New Composition from Footage. So let's go ahead and click there. Now it's going to bring up an import dialog. And here we're going to go to our sample images that we literally just exported. So here you can see all of our sample images. They're all sized the exact same. So let's go ahead and click on the first one, hold Shift, and go all the way down to the very bottom one. Perfect. We're going to go to where it says Create Composition and be sure to check that box there. And we're going to click on Open. There we go. Now, our new composition from selection, we want a single composition. That's perfect. Use dimensions from Underwater Parallax 01. That's great. I mean, they're all the exact same dimensions, so it doesn't matter here. But this looks really, really good. So we're going to hit OK, and boom, all of a sudden you can see we have a new composition here. Okay, we can hit play. Nothing happens if we hit play, but you can hit play if you want to. And then we have all of our layers. There we go, in our composition. I'm going to say things like layers and stuff like that. In After Effects, everything's called a little bit different, but I'm a Photoshop guy, so to me, these are layers. Let me know what they are actually in the comments down below. Now, here you can see we have 01, 02, 03, 04. That is actually really great. However, it's the opposite of what we want. Just like in Photoshop, we want the background 01. We want that to be at the bottom of the stack. So we want to reverse this order. It's actually really easy to do. If I click on the first one and then scroll all the way down to the bottom and hit Control-Command X to cut them, just cut them out, and then Control-Command V to paste them, they just paste in the opposite order, okay? I looked online and this is the simplest way to do it. I couldn't find anything that says reverse layer order. If you can find something like that, amazing. I just couldn't find anything like that. So the next thing we want to do is we want the ability for a camera to move through these different layers. And to do that, we need to make what's called a 3D layer here in After Effects. So here's how we do it. So now this little icon right up here, it says a 3D layer, allows this layer to be manipulated in 3 dimensions. So we want that. So I'm just going to click on this little gray box right here, just click there, and because all of these different layers are already selected, it went ahead and made them all 3D layers, as you can see. That's looking really good. So now we just need to go ahead and select out, because right now I still have all my layers selected. So I'm just going to click right to the left of any of these layers, boop, click right there, and then you can see I can select any one of these layers individually. I can use this down little arrow, there we go. And you can see I can go into my transform, I can do my position, my scale, orientation, rotation, opacity, and things like that. But the next thing we want to do is actually change a couple of these blend modes. Remember, we have this layer here, we wrote in our instructions to ourselves, screen, okay? This is going to be set to screen. This one's going to be set to soft light. So how do we change our blend modes here in After Effects? So we have all of these different layers here, yes. Then we have our Underwater Parallax. This is the name of our composition. You can see Composition Underwater Parallax. And then we have this little icon right over here to the right of it, this little 3 lines. So let's go ahead and click there. Now we have all these set composition settings and things like that. Then we have an option for our columns. So in this columns, we want to go right to where it says modes. Okay, we want to just turn that on. So let's go ahead and click there. Boop. I click on there, it expands it out to the right, and now you can see we have mode here turning on our blending modes. Here we have our screen blend mode. We're just going to change this, click on there. We're going to go normal. And then look, we have all the same blending modes that we want in Photoshop. There's actually a couple more. You can see like stencil, alpha, stuff like that. In this case, we just want to do screen. So let's go over to where it says screen. Boom. That looks really good. Okay. This other one down here, this hair and bubbles, we want to change that to, clicked on the wrong thing. We want to change that to screen also. Perfect. This one we want to set to soft light. So let's go ahead and click right there and go to where it says soft light. There we go. And then this one, we want to set this to lighten. All right. So we're going to go from normal and then we're going to go down here to where it says lighten. Boom. And then that is set to lighten. And now we should actually be getting something. Let's go ahead and shrink this down a little bit so you guys can see here. Now we should be getting something that actually looks like our final composition. The only thing is this screen blend mode here at the very, very top of this. This has much of a high opacity is what I wanted to just say. Oh my gosh, what am I talking about? The opacity is way too high on this. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to click this little caret, this little down icon, and we're going to go to where it says opacity, okay? And I'm just going to type in like 50%. Okay, we want that to be 50% opacity. Now let's go ahead and bring this up. Okay, now we have our modes. We can see our screen blend modes. So now that we've changed all of our blending modes, we can go ahead and hide this extra stuff that we don't need. So here we see mode and track mat and parent and link. We actually don't need any of that stuff. So I'm going to right click here and we're just going to go to where it says hide this. Boop. And then it's going to hide this. And you can also right click here and go to columns. And then I'm going to unclick parent and link right there just to make it a little bit more simple because honestly, we just don't need to see any of that stuff. Okay. So now we're in a really good place. Our image looks the way it should. All right. We're looking so good. And everything is in the proper layer order. All of our layers are 3D. Make sure they have these little icons. So we are ready to go ahead and create our camera. So we're going to go here. We're going to go to layer, down to new, and then over here to camera. There we go. Now this is basically like a 3-dimensional camera. And if you are familiar with any of your camera stuff in real life, you can actually like enter in all of your own settings here. So here, like our focal length, for instance, if it's about a 60mm camera, if you want like a very wide angle look, you can do that. I'm going to go for, we're going to type in 80. I want an 80mm camera. It's not going to be too zoomed in, but it's not going to be too wide angle. And this actually looks really, really good. So let's go ahead and hit OK. Boop. And then we have our camera 1. Okay. So what do we actually do with our camera? Well, right now, basically what I'm looking at is like we have one view of our image, right? I want to be able to see our image like from above because we need to move these layers in 3-dimensional space. So the next thing we're going to do is change our view so we can actually see our main image and then also an image from above so we can start moving our camera and our layers. So if you want to create another view, just right click here in your composition, just right click. We're going to go to switch view layout, okay? And then we're going to go to where it says 2 views. All right, 2 views, and then you can just kind of scroll out using your mouse wheel if you want to, or you can zoom right over here. You can go to fit, you can go, let's just go to fit for now. Okay, so you can see this is actually our top view. Now I can right click here, I could go to switch 3D view, you could go to front, left, back, things like this. But basically this one is viewing it through our camera. Okay, and then this one is actually viewing it from the top. So we can see this is what our camera looks like. We can actually just click right here on our camera. I'm going to just zoom out. So let's go to like 3% zoom. And you can see I can actually move my camera in X, Y, or Z space. You have these tiny little markers here. But you can see I can click here and I'm going to move it to the right or left. And you can see it's doing that with my composition here. Let's hit Control-Command-Z to undo. Okay. I can click right up here and it's going to move it closer or farther. Okay. And that's in Z space because again, I'm actually like looking from the top here. This is a top view. Okay. Now what we're going to wind up doing is animating our camera looking closer and farther in Z space. Okay. That's the goal. But at this point, like it's not doing any type of effect. And the reason is, all of our layers, as we can see, all of these different layers, they are actually like in the exact same place in terms of Z space, okay? Z space is like this, basically, like looking down from the top, okay? You have X, you have Y, and then you have Z, okay? So basically what we need to do is click on each of our layers here. There we go. And then we're going to move them either forward or backwards. For instance, let's just click on this fish right here. Okay, I'll click on this fish and move it towards the camera. And we can see here in this animation, can you see here right over there? Let's just make it a bit bigger so you can actually see what you need to see. I'm going to just take this project window and we're going to close that panel because we don't actually need it right now. Okay, so we're just going to go to this fish on the very bottom. Okay, and then here on our layer, let's change it from 3 to 6%. There we go. So let's just go to this fish. Okay, so now if I move this closer, farther away from my image in Z space, you can see, yeah, it is in fact closer. So we can go ahead and start moving this a little bit closer to our image. There we go. And now I'm going to go to my camera, and if I move my camera in and out, there we go, you can see the fish starts to move in a different rate than the rest of my image. It's a subtle effect as of now, but as we do this more and more, it's going to get a little bit more obvious. So this point here, that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and take the fish, and I'm just going to start off with the background. So we're just going to take this background. This is the Underwater Parallax 01, and I'm going to push this backwards. You can see if I could push it backwards or forwards. There we go. We're going to push it way, way, way back. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. We're going to go to 3% zoom, and I'm going to push this way back. The farther back you push something, basically the stronger effect you're going to have. Now, as I move that farther back, you're going to see, okay, great. It's further back, but now it's tiny. It doesn't actually fit properly in the scene. So what do we do there? Well, we can actually scale this. So I'm going to click here, this Underwater Parallax 01. We're just going to click on this little down arrow, okay? And then over to transform, and then here where it says scale. So I'm just going to take this, and because they're all chain linked together, just click and drag this until we have our proper scale. There we go. Now this doesn't have to be perfect, but we have our proper scale now on this background layer. You can also just click on this layer and hit S, and that's going to bring up your scale property. So that's what we're going to be doing a little bit, to move a little bit faster to this. So now if I go to my camera and I start moving it in Z scale, you can see, like, yes, things move, but you can see my background is not moving at the same rate as everything else. Okay, so that's looking really good. So basically what we need to do is take all of these layers, okay, and start pushing them back into Z space. So we're going to push that back. I'm going to hit S for scale, and then we're just going to scale this way up, okay? Now this one here, we're also just going to push that way back. That's that cave back there. Perfect. And then S for scale, we're going to go ahead and scale that up. There we go. We have our next cave. We're going to go ahead and push that back in space. And then S for scale, and we're going to go ahead and scale that up as well. So it's like basically looking the same as we go through this. Our stingray, we're going to take that, push that way back there, S for scale, and then scale this way back up. So at this point, it looks the same, more or less, than when we started. Let's go ahead and click off. You can see the composition more or less looks the same, and that's actually what you want. But from our top view here, we can see that, yeah, all my layers are now different in Z space. Like this is in front of that, which is in front of that. So we have some depth. So let's go back up here to our camera, okay? And I'm going to start pushing that in Z space. And look at this. Now we can start to see our effect is starting to come together, especially when you look just at those background layers, right? The foreground and background, all of it is basically moving at a different rate. And that is exactly what we want. We want them to be moving at a different rate. Okay, so we're basically just going to keep pushing through that. We're just going to keep going and going and going. There we go. This layer here, we're just moving. This is our coloring layer, so we're just going to bring that in, S, and scale that up. Perfect. I can make that nice and big because it's just a coloring layer. All right, this coral, we're going to push back there again, S to scale this up. Fantastic. There we go. And I don't know if you heard my dog in the background right there. I guess she's hungry or something. Okay, S for scale, and we're going to go ahead and scale that up as well. Okay, so our hair bubbles and our subject, we're going to click on both of those because they need to be in the exact same place. There we go. So we're just going to push them right there. S for scale. And then we're just going to scale those both at the same time also. Okay, so we're almost done here. This coral, let's go ahead and move that forward as well. S for scale. We're going to move this up. Now, just like anything you do in Photoshop, you will have a lot of opportunity to fine-tune your adjustments, okay? So if what you do, like right off the bat, isn't exactly what you want, well, that makes a lot of sense. That's how this game works. Okay, but this looks pretty good. So this is basically what you want. You want your camera, and then you want your layers to move backwards in space, just like they would be moving backwards in space in real life. And then we're going to go ahead and go back to our camera here, okay? And we're going to start moving through it. There we go. And look at that image here on the left. You can see how it starts. Look how beautiful that is. It starts to look like we actually have that parallax effect where everything is actually moving how we would want it to move. Now, if something's like this layer here in the background, like this layer of coral, for instance, let's go ahead and hit undo. That layer of coral in the background, let's just find out which one it actually is. I'm happy that I named some of these things because it's like, now it's getting a little bit confusing. This layer here, it came a little bit too forward. So I actually just want to move that back in space. Let's push that even farther back. And then we're going to hit S to scale that and then just scale it right back up to its current. And then let's go back to our camera and start pushing in and moving out. And we can see, okay, cool. It's looking a lot better now. So as we move this in and out, we have a greater sense of how things are actually going to move throughout our image, and we get something that looks a lot better. So our background is looking pretty good, but I think we need to bring some elements even closer to the camera now. So let's go ahead and start on the top of our list. We're just going to start with this fish here, and we're just going to bring this even closer to our camera so you can see further away or closer to the camera. Let's go ahead and bring it nice and close, and then I just need to scale this down, okay? There we go, and as I scale it down, you're going to start to see, okay, cool. And you can use the bounding box. If you see this bounding box here, keep in mind that all of these different layers are saved out to be the exact same dimension. So you can use that bounding box to give you an approximate idea of how far they should actually go. And you can hold the controller command key. If I go like larger and smaller here with my scale, it happens pretty quick. If you hold controller command, it actually slows that down a little bit. Okay, there we go. So we're just bringing some of these even closer to the camera, like this piece of coral here. Let's go ahead and bring that nice and close to the camera. And then we're just going to go to where it says scale, and we're just going to bring that nice and further down. Hold down that controller command key when you get close. There we go. So the more distance you put in between these, let's go ahead and take this coral, bring it really, really nice and close. Also, that should maybe even be closer than that other one. The more distance you place in between these different layers, there we go, the greater your parallax effect is going to be. The subject, okay, don't forget the subject and the bubbles of the screen, okay, those are going to need to be even closer. There we go. So let's go ahead and pull those even closer. And of course, we need to scale those down because my subject looks crazy huge right now. Okay, cool. That looks perfect. And this coral, there we go. This one I decided to push way back in the back. There we go. Let's make this one a little bit closer. So we'll take this coral, there we go, and then we'll go ahead and scale this one down as well. Okay, so again, just keep in mind that the more distance you have between these objects, the greater that parallax effect is going to be. Okay, so let's go back all the way up here. We still have our camera 1, okay? We have our little controls on here. I know they're super tiny. You can also go in here, by the way, if you just go into your transform, okay? You can go into your transform and you can see position. You have your, there we go, your X, Y, and Z. So I can just click on this and drag it in and out too, okay? I don't have to click on my little tiny little things right there. But if you do hover over the right thing, you'll see it says Z right there. So I can click there and drag in, and all of a sudden, oh yeah, we're getting a much cooler effect there with our blend. Also, the other thing that I'm seeing, like as I'm zooming in and out here, by the way, you can see the bubbles, they were supposed to be behind that cave. So let's go ahead and take that cave that is just way, way, way down in the back. We can see, where is this cave? There we go. Maybe I wasn't even layering my layers as we went. Okay, which one are you, cave? Okay, this cave front here. Maybe I want to take this cave front. I don't even have to move it in the layer position. I can actually just bring it forward. And as long as I like put it in front of my subject, which is I think right here, S for scale, I can scale it down now. So I'm just clicking on those numbers and scaling it right down, hold Control or Command. So I believe, let's go back up to our camera. Okay, I believe now, yeah, look, that cave is actually right in front of where my subject is. Okay, so these bubbles and things like that, they're moving behind the cave. But kind of what's happening here is that as I move my camera forward, like, yes, I'm getting this cool parallax effect, but the thing that's happening is like right about here, these bubbles actually start to, they start to disappear, because in the original image, those bubbles, they didn't move. So of course they would just disappear. So I have two options really there. What I can do is I can take my subject. Okay, where is my subject here? If I click on my subject, I'll see about where they are in X, Y, or Z space. So they're like right about there. So I can actually take my subject and then, there we go. Where's my cave? There we go. This one here. If I wanted to, there we go. This layer, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to move that to about exactly about the same space as where my subject is, and move that up. The other thing that I can do is I can go back in Photoshop. This is what I would do if we had more time. I would go back into Photoshop and simply cut out those bubbles, put them on their own layer, same exact process, save it out as a PNG, and then those could move independently with everything else as well. So you can see here there's a lot that you can do. Okay, let's go ahead and move in. We're going to go back to our camera, and I'm going to start moving this forward or backwards. So now you see, because the top of this cave is basically in the same Z space as my subject, as I move the camera forward or backwards and things like that, there we go. You can see, okay, cool. Now, as I'm moving in and out, we're able to reduce that issue that we had with that, with those bubbles. Okay, as I move up here, okay, there we go. That's looking pretty good. But now as I move up a little bit closer, as soon as I get to like, well, kind of like right here, what I'm seeing is that the cave in the back, this cave, there we go, is starting to become, boom, you can see it. I'm seeing where everything like breaks apart in my, in my actual effect. So what I can do is I can go here and find this other cave in the back. There we go. That's our cave in the back. And I can just bring this a lot more forward. Okay. And I can scale it down. The other thing I could do, obviously, is go back into Photoshop. I could recreate that cave like up till the very top and then kind of like remake this. Well, just remake the cave basically. Okay. There we go. Let's see our camera and we're moving in. There we go. Now we're not getting so much of that cave effect as being messed up, right? All right, so as we go through here, we can just kind of see, and I'm looking at a pretty low resolution preview here, and then any of these layers where I'm like, you know what, this could be a little bit closer, this could be a little bit farther, anything like this that I move throughout space, there we go. I'll just scale this down. Where's my S for scale? Fantastic. So now we're in the adjustment phase where like you have everything pretty well roughed in, and then we're going to go through and kind of like move this all around through space. Okay, cool. Now at this point, it's not perfect. Like it could be definitely a lot more interesting, a lot better. You could go in and animate all these fish, but we have the basis of our parallax effect looking pretty good. As you can see, like, yeah, it looks totally good. So what we're going to go ahead and do now is animate the movement of our camera. So we're just basically going to move this coming into our image. So to animate the camera, we're just going to move this up a little bit so we have a little bit more room down here so we can see what we're doing. Okay, now this camera one, let's go ahead right over here, this little down arrow there, and then we have our position. So this is what we're going to be animating, is the position itself. You can animate all this stuff. You can rotate it and things like that, but basically the position. So we're going to click on this little icon. Okay, there we go. Click on that icon, and that's going to create a keyframe as you see right here. So that's a keyframe right here. Now, basically that takes into account exactly where the camera is. Now, if I move my timeline, okay, let's go ahead and move that forward in time. We'll go to about 10, there we go, 10 frames. That looks pretty good. And I take my position. Now, I don't, this is our X position there. This is our Y position. There we go. And then we have our Z position. So I can move that in space. And I can move it in basically until it doesn't look good. That's like kind of my rule of thumb here, until it doesn't look good. Okay, so now we have our starting position and our ending position. So if I go in here and I just click right here and I hit the space bar, it's just going to play through those different speeds. Basically, you can see it's just going to go through and play there. Now, let's go ahead. I'm going to move to my next position. So if I want to, let's go ahead and take this out all the way out to the end. We're going to move this all the way to the end. I'm going to hold my space bar, or just hit the space bar. It's going to render it out. You can see it goes a little slowly, and then it's going to go a little bit faster. That looks great. Now, if I want to move all the way to the very end of my keyframe, let's go back here. There we go. Push to that keyframe. All right, let's just move the keyframe one frame forward. There we go. That looks good. So if I move to the very end, I can also work on my point of interest. I can change my point of interest here to, there we go. I can move that up or down. There we go. And I can move this to the left or the right. So if we do this, and let's say I animate my X and my Y a little bit too, now if I do this, it's not going to just go straight in. It's going to kind of move at an angle. You can see it kind of moves and rotates around this different area. So let's go ahead and hit the space bar. There we go. And now we have an animation that's kind of like not just pushing straight in, it's actually going from the side. And we have something that's a little bit more interesting. Now, let's say we have something like, okay, that's cool, but here at the very end, okay, like let's see at the very end, we have this little glow is supposed to be right behind my subject. Let's say I want to move that. All right, so let's go ahead. We can find that glow. There we go. Where's this? That's the little glow right there. We can find that little glow. And then I can go all the way to the very front. Let's just go ahead, open this camera, go back to our first keyframe here. There we go. So our little glow is right here, this underwater lighten. Okay, I'm going to just keyframe the position of that. Okay. Then let's go all the way to the end. Then I can go back to my glow here, and I can keyframe the position of this too. I can actually move this. All right. It affects the lighting and some of that stuff like that for like this layer. But I can also scale it if I want to, and that actually might wind up helping that. So I can scale that, and then this is going to move basically at the same pace as my subject moves. So as I go through, that light is going to stay behind my subject, and we have a little bit more of an interesting parallax. So now, as you can see, this animation looks pretty cool, pretty interesting. I would probably tweak it and some things like that, but you can see we have our parallax effect actually working for us. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to go to the very end. We can see we have these couple of keyframes. What we're going to do is highlight those keyframes. Okay, we're going to go to animation and then down to keyframe assistance. We're going to go to easy ease in, and this is just going to make it kind of like slow down at the very end, okay? And then I'm going to do the same thing with this other layer too. Boop. This glow that we did on the end, because that's the only thing we animated, right? We're going to get animation, keyframe assistant, easy ease in. All right, and let's just do one more thing. Let's just do the stingray. Why not, right? We'll do the stingray. So let's go ahead. We'll move to the first keyframe. There we go. And the stingray, we're going to animate its position. So here we're going to go ahead and start its position. There we go. Whoops. Let's go ahead and push it off to the right. You can see, there we go. And push it down. Okay, then let's go click on this little arrow on the camera to go all the way to the end of our animation for the camera. And then for our stingray, let's just push the stingray over there and over there. Okay, and then I'm going to click on that keyframe, animation, keyframe assistant, easy ease into. Obviously, you could do this with every single fish and things like that. But let's go ahead and hit the space bar here and see, like, now it's not just my subject moving. Now we can see it slows down at the end, which is an effect that we really like. And my stingray is moving also. Now, at this point, I think we're looking really good. I think here at the end, honestly, like, I think I went a little bit too much with some of these settings. So, like, our point of interest, if you want to reset some of these things, you can actually just go to the end and click on reset. Boom. And there we go. And then basically you have, like, now that thing in the background is moving. That the stingray is moving, but nothing else is moving. So let's go to the very end. Basically, I think let's just do majority of it. I want to do a punch in, and then we'll just do a little bit lower and a little bit to the side, just to give us a little bit more interest there. Okay, and then to the very end, if I want to, I'm going to go back to this position here, and I just need to push this a little bit closer to my subject, and then we're just going to scale it down a little bit more, like how it was. There we go. So by now you should have a decent idea of how this works. So let's just hit our space bar, and then you can see, yeah, we're zooming into our subject. It takes a little second to actually animate. There we go. That's looking pretty good. We have a decent parallax effect here. It's not too crazy, but it works well, and we can continue our basically adjusting from there. So at this point, what I would do personally is spend like 5 hours making this perfect, right? I would even think about cutting out a lot of these fish from the background, animating them on their own. Like, there's a lot you can do here. And I think you have probably by now a pretty good idea of how to do it. So what we're going to do is go ahead and export this out so we have a final video animation. So to export this, it's pretty easy to do. We're just going to go ahead and click on our camera one. We're going to go to File. We're going to go down here to Export, and we're going to go to Add to Render Queue. Add to Render Queue. Perfect. Now here, I already did an export, so we're going to see we want to put to our best settings, H.264. That's perfect for streaming on the web. So if you're going to put this on social media, that's fantastic. And then here, we're going to see output to, just go ahead and click there. This will open up your Finder window or your Windows Explorer, whatever you have. And then you can go ahead and give it a name. This is going to be 01_1. So let's go ahead and hit save, and then just click on render. There we go. And it's going to push so you can see, hey, that did it pretty quick. So went ahead and exported out. Let's go ahead and take a look. So back here into our Finder window, here we can see our parallax 01_01. There we go. And here is our final movie. There we go. Let's hit the play button a couple times, and we can see, yes, in fact, we have our parallax, and it is working. Now, at this point, this is a relatively quick tutorial. I went ahead and did this with a lot more work, so let's show you the end result of what I did after a couple hours of tweaking it. Thanks so much for watching. Again, I try to do this as quick as possible. There's so many steps here. You can see there's a final version that I actually spent a couple hours on, and you can see it's a lot more refined. But you can see you can use these exact same techniques on any composite image, and basically any image that has layers in Photoshop. As long as you've got layers, you can then animate and move the camera around and create these stunning parallax effects. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you'd like this, give us a big thumbs up and click on that subscribe button. We'll send you more free Photoshop, photography, and I guess After Effects tutorials as well. Let me know if you guys want to see more After Effects or Adobe Premiere. I love all these programs, and I'm super happy to teach them. Thanks so much. I'll learn you later. Forgot what to say. Bye, everyone.